2020 will be remembered for many things. In Hillsborough, I hope it will be remembered for how our community listened as our neighbors of color shared their stories and concerns about racial injustice. I hope 2020 will be remembered for how leaders listened and followed through with research and actions, and how throughout a pandemic, our first responders demonstrated their commitment to serving time and time again. While 2020 revealed divisions across our country, I believe in Hillsborough in 2021, we are together in our shared desire to do better, better in service of and in partnership with our communities of color, better in moving forward with our policy advancements, and better in building on a foundation of dignity, respect, service, and just outcomes. Those values are specifically called out in the new Hillsborough Police Department mission statement, and they are the values that help guide our conversation about public safety and first responders. And joining me to discuss this today are Hillsborough City Councilor Gina Roletto, Nancy Lopez, the Latinx Business Outreach Director for the Hillsborough Chamber of Commerce. We have Chief Jim Coleman from the Hillsborough Police Department, Chief David Downey with Hillsborough Fire and Rescue, and Rahim Harji, our Assistant City Manager. Thank you all for making the time to be here. I want to begin by recognizing how essential our first responders are to our community. And it's been remarkable that throughout this pandemic, we have not seen any disruption in our public services. Chief Downey, Chief Coleman, how has this been accomplished?
Well, thank you, Mayor. It really all started about a year ago in the first week of March when we needed to really start to implement some changes that would sort of maximize the safety of all of our responders. We changed the way we put on our personal protective equipment, the way we engaged with patients, the way we cleaned and disinfected the stations, the equipment, everything with the potential to minimize exposure of the workforce so we could continue to provide services. And I know Chief Coleman would agree, without the diligent effort and adaptability of the police officers and the firefighters, that wouldn't have been possible. They really stepped up to that challenge. One of the biggest challenges had to do with personal protective equipment, and we're still facing that challenge today. We worked closely with Washington County Emergency Management, our own emergency manager, and all of our logistics teams to make sure that we didn't run short on PPE. I would say that was probably the largest and continuing challenge we still have. But aside from the pandemic, the only challenge this year was not that. We had to deal with a significant wildfire threat this season. At one time, Hillsborough firefighters were at 9 different fires across the state in Oregon, August through October. That included, of course, the historic week of September 7th through 12th, where we had 50 brush fires and down power line calls ourselves in the city of Hillsborough. That was unprecedented, along with, of course, helping our partners in Clackamas County with the Riverside Fire. So it was a very, very challenging year for everybody in public safety.
Thank you. Chief Coleman, how were you able to accomplish that?
Well, I would just reiterate everything that Chief Downey said. It really was, it's new territory for everybody, and understanding how to keep our first responders engaged and doing the good work that they do, but also both accommodating their health and the health of the people that they interact with day in and day out really challenged us, but brought forth a lot of creativity and a lot of adapting and understanding. And I would just add, along with Chief Downey, that we regularly and throughout the entire circumstances of the pandemic received so many notices and letters and voice messages of support from the community, and that really helped sustain us through what's turned out to be a very long ordeal.
Thank you, and please know we are grateful for our first responders and their sense of duty and their commitment. You know, now in this past year, much attention has been focused on how we provide public safety services for our communities of color. And earlier this year, the council released a joint statement recognizing that Black Lives Matter following the tragic killing of George Floyd. Several of us attended protests here in our community calling for justice reform and public safety reform. So we've seen also how our police department responded so positively to these conversations. So meeting the needs of our marginalized communities and how we keep our communities safe are not mutually exclusive. And we can get better in the way that we provide public safety services, and we can make sure that our police department has everything they need to do just that. Councilor Roletto, many of these events happened in 2020 before you were elected to serve on Hillsborough City Council. So what were your observations as a community member who cares deeply?
Yes, it's been quite a year. I've been a part of this community for over 20 years, and the two main roles that I have played has been as a mother and also an educator, which ties me so closely to Hillsborough. So as an educator, I knew the stories of my families, and I've heard those stories that were shared for years. And as an educator, I helped them navigate the systems in order to resolve things that came up, as well as heal from any experiences that they may have had. At the same time, within the schools and as an educator, as an administrator, I was also able to work with the police department and the school resource officers within the boundaries and the expectations that I created when working with my students. So that was my experience with that. And as a mom and as a community member, last summer's Black Lives Matters movement really provided an awareness for our community that I don't think many expected to experience. And the stories that they heard, I don't think a lot of people were anticipating that. We saw vulnerability from many of our community members, which in my opinion is a privilege to witness. And I don't want to see that diminish, because we need to show the community the commitment being made by the police department, as just shared by Chief. And also, we also need to see the commitment from even city systems like ours, as well as the school district, and keep creating spaces where community members feel safe to speak and participate within the work that we do.
Thank you. You know, and throughout 2020 and even into 2021, we've worked to engage in outreach to listen and hear people's stories. Nancy, you and the chamber have worked so hard, especially through social media, to get the word out in English and Spanish, so that we can hear from as many different voices as possible about how we can serve everyone better. So first of all, I want to thank you, for helping us in such a visible way with this effort and connecting with our businesses in the Latinx community. So was there an overriding message or theme that you heard from business owners and community members throughout this last year?
Mayor Callaway, in March, the Latinx business community encountered two issues in our community. First and foremost, it was the hearings of the pandemic. They were still very much at the inception of the pandemic. They were small, but still big enough to concern our community. And secondly, it was the ICE administrative subpoena. I'll start by saying a couple of things in regards to the pandemic. The pandemic allowed us to see many disparities in our communities in regards to communication and support and funding. So when we were able to see those issues, we were able to connect with our city, the city of Hillsborough, to be able to work alongside city employees to create great programs for our business community. We were also able to work in getting PPE for our communities that at one point at the beginning, again, of the pandemic was very difficult and very expensive for business owners. So the city also was able to help with that in setting up a grant for businesses. Additionally, they were at the table when we were talking about funding and creating funding that really helped our Latinx business owners. I think also the important piece about talking about this is that we know and understand some of the challenges that our business owners were having. Some were asked to shut down immediately. It was difficult to hear people have to talk about their situation and being unable to support their family. Sometimes people had anywhere from 2 to 17 families that they had to support. Some people said that they did not know if they would make it through the pandemic. Some people were very emotional and mentally drained regarding the pandemic and the many changes in terms of rules and regulations. That impacted a lot of our Latinx community, especially because, as we've seen at the state level, the information we get doesn't come out at a simultaneous manner, and that was such a difficult situation to navigate. However, we also had excellent partners and champions in being able to turn that around and getting that time shortened from anywhere from sometimes a week to nearly 2 to 3 days. Although it wasn't what we wanted, but it was definitely a change, and we definitely had great partners. And again, the city was one of them. I think the other piece that is important in terms of the other issue that I mentioned earlier regarding ICE was that we had you, someone to bat for our community that understood that we were already in a bad situation and that we had a great partner, our chief, Coleman, who also came up to bat for community and saying that we were going to protect community and that we were going to do that work. And so that was important for our community in terms of receiving that message. I remember that day when you delivered a message via video and I was able to print some information on paper. I went out from business to business, and after a lot of those visits, people wanted to know who Steve Calloway was. So it was a great message to hear from our community, and they understood that they were very much being supported in this city that's a sanctuary city. So we, the business community, appreciate that work. And I think that's all I can share in terms of those two things. But I think, again, more importantly, I appreciate the partnership and the allyship amongst our chamber and the city of Hillsborough.
Thank you very much. And we're, again, very grateful for the partnership that we share with you. And we're grateful, again, as it was mentioned, Chief, for your support in that situation. You know, Rahim, as we work then to evaluate public safety and address local concerns, as Nancy mentioned, you've been instrumental in coordinating a multi-departmental effort on police review and advancement. Could you kind of give folks an overview as well as an update on all of that?
Yes, Mayor. We wanted to make sure we had multiple perspectives on public safety within the city. So we formed an internal work group that comprised of staff from the police department, human resources and risk management, and the city manager's office, but also the Hillsborough Police Officers Association. But we wanted to make sure we heard from the community first. We held several community engagement sessions, including having 2 of them, one in English and one in Spanish, with an external facilitator, because we recognize that some people may not be comfortable communicating with us directly. We also gathered several comments via texts, voicemails, and emails. We then had several work sessions with our council to better explain the current state of policing and public safety in the city, and then present the council with some things we thought we could do better. Following these several work sessions, the council asked us to continue to engage with the community on an ongoing basis and increase how we do this engagement. Explore options for more oversight, to be more transparent and have multiple perspectives. Also expand on our equity training, not just for the police department, but the city as a whole. And then also look into how we can stand up more mental health response teams with our partners.
Thank you. So that was a lot of work that's been done. And, Chief, I want to thank you for how committed you and your department have been throughout this whole process. You've been a part of these challenging conversations, and you are making Hillsborough a model, for policing and public safety. What would you tell community members about the work that you and your department have done so far?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. And I would just share an example. As we look at ourselves, you start to realize that, in some places you always have room for improvement, maybe even some blind spots. One of our first realizations was that although our policy is constantly under review and even sometimes under revision, There are practices that we don't train, that we don't employ, like chokeholds, that the language in our policy benefited from us revisiting that and making it unequivocal that we banned such practices in our police department, even though it was kind of understood just through the training. There are a number of additional steps we've taken over many months, and those include improving our complaint review process and investing in some technical resources that have allowed us to allow people to feel confident that they can electronically file anonymous police complaints, and that we'll follow up on them. We've been building the framework for a new community police advisory group. We're establishing an internal use of force review board. We're expanding our equity training, both at the city level and then specifically towards police work at the department level. And we've oriented, as you mentioned earlier, our department values to the traits we feel our department makes it most distinctive. Those values are treating people with dignity and respect, having an attitude of service in how we deliver public safety to the city of Hillsborough, and embracing practices that deliver just outcomes. And an example of those practices are in the last several weeks, our officers have responded to multiple incidents involving individuals that were in a mental health crisis, and we even responded to an incident of workplace violence. In each circumstance, the individual was armed and threatened others. Our officers used their experience and training to isolate the individuals from the public, to safely evacuate individuals that were in the same buildings and rooms as them. And in one case, even engaged in over 3 hours of negotiation with an armed individual, in the end resulting in that individual surrendering and us being able to complete that process without injury to him or any of our officers or any of the public. So not every incident can come out as successfully as that, but the vast majority do, because of the skill and the exceptional efforts that our officers undertake under very stressful circumstances.
Thank you for the update, but also thank you for just making it very real to us, you know, with the encapsulation of those recent events, and again, our gratitude for how those situations were resolved in the manner that they were. So thank you for that. Councilor Ruletto, you know, one of our 2021 council priorities is police advancement and review. Can you share with us what you're looking for going forward?
Yes, actually, the work that we did in regards to those priorities, I was really happy to see that not only was it a priority, but we are very intentional about where it was on the list of priorities too, because we didn't want it to just, you know, drift away as time passed. So that I really appreciated that part of the process. As far as what I'm looking for going forward, Nancy touched on it a bit, but I think as we go forward as a city, the big lesson that we've learned is regular and clear communication with all pockets of our community. And especially in this work, that regular communication of the work that's happening with a sense of accountability of what we're doing, so people know that we mean what we say that we want to do and improve. And our commitment to learn and listen as it's been brought up, and of course the acting. So, and I also hope that as these groups are being formed and as they're shaping up, that the people that are part of it, as far as the advisory groups, have an opportunity to also help shape it a little bit, as well as us making sure that they're also culturally relevant to the people that we're serving and is represented within that group. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Thank you. You mentioned communication, and Nancy, you know, we know that that's an important part of building relationships at the grassroots level. For businesses, those relationships, you know, are with customers and with the city. Can you kind of share with us some of that, I guess, some of the foundational important parts of relationships that the Latinx community has with the city as well as their customers?
Of course. As you mentioned, the foundation of trust is undoubtedly an essential component in building community. I feel that that's been the most important piece of work that we've done here at the Hillsborough Chamber. And that's due in part because we do understand the community. We understand that it needed a little more work than not most, but some of our communities here in Hillsborough. And so we've done that work. We've made sure to meet people where they're at. And that's one of the things I could say is very important. We're meeting people where they're at. If you want to do that, that means you're going out to connect with people and having conversations and asking what they need, asking how you can support them so that you can get information to best support those needs. And so the other piece to that has been collaboration. I would not be here had it not been for the collaboration we have with the City of Hillsborough, our local community partners such as Adelante Mujeres, Prosperidad, Centro Cultural. Those are very important organizations for our community. And that's been key to a lot of our success. Additionally, the other parts of our City of Hillsborough, which would include the Hillsborough Police Department, which we've done extensive outreach with, which we very much appreciate because that's allowed business of the business community to get information as needed. Additionally, with the fire department in regards to their work for the City of Hillsborough as it came up regarding the pandemic. So that too has been very key and essential to the work that we've been doing. Some of the things that I can say in the last year for 2020 that just come to mind in terms of us really coming to work and doing our best for community has been the courageous conversations that you mentioned just a bit ago. Those have been key in terms of having community come to a space where they can be a part of and actually give voice to the issues that they're encountering in their daily lives. We were able to do that with Chief Coleman on a couple of occasions, and I appreciate being able to do that because it's not often that chiefs come down and get that connection with community. So I appreciate that on many levels. And lastly, I would say that I'm thinking about a quote from Maya Angelou. And she would always, I can't remember the poem exactly, but it's really just in reference that she doesn't come alone. And I'm gonna look at my notes because I reminded our Latinx business community that I'd be coming to this space and that I would not forget them and give a message. And one of the business owners said, I think I can put, with liberty say the following. So I'm gonna read it for you a little bit. So it says, I'm going to take the liberty of speaking for all of Hillsborough's entrepreneurs, if you allow me to. When the pandemic began, the economy was affected almost immediately. This Hillsborough Chamber of Commerce played a key role in supporting Hillsborough businesses with very valuable information and financial aid that rescued us from difficult situations and difficult issues. The help has been constant during the pandemic. We thank the state, the City of Hillsborough, the city mayor, and especially the Hillsborough Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Coleman, as Nancy talked about the importance of, fostering those strong relationships and thank you. It's great to hear the reports of your availability and accessibility to the business owners. Those are, your values as well and your focus areas as well. Can you, kind of share a little bit more about that?
Sure. And, first of all, I think it's appropriate to thank Nancy so much. She made herself known to me, and I've relied on her to help us build bridges into the Latinx community, and she's been indispensable. And, when you talk about building trust, I feel like, Nancy and I are hopefully modeling that. And I really appreciate her partnership with me in that. And I'm excited for the future, the really great things we can do. And, you and her have both touched on one of our primary focuses, even before the events of 2020. It was something we were orienting towards and realizing we wanted to do better. And that's, we already foster strong relationships with a lot of entities throughout the community, but what we wanted to do was more importantly build new ones and lasting ones with businesses and organizations like the chamber and individuals out in the community that have traditionally not had as close of a relationship with the police department. And I would just say in the end, we want Hillsborough to be the home of a police department that builds community-wide trust through a combination of competency, character, and ultimately caring.
Thank you. And that's what it's all about, is making sure that we have better public safety for everyone. And meeting community members' expectations, addressing the concerns raised by our communities of color, and supporting our police. I firmly believe that we can do it all. And our police department is committed to doing that as well. So thank you. And, our fire and rescue is also, committed to that. And, throughout this time has, worked on, approaching, our communities of color and ways to build and strengthen those relationships. And Chief Downey, can you share some of what you've done in that space?
Yeah, Mayor, absolutely. We really try to improve fire and life safety through an education first approach rather than sort of the enforcement arm of the fire code, if you will. We like to use the philosophy of keep them safe, but help them be successful. And that's really helped us build some relationships, some strong relationships with the members of the community and businesses specifically. Just a couple of recent examples as businesses have really had to be agile with the pandemic. They've had to change the interior arrangement of some of their businesses and had some questions about how to do that safely. We were able to help. And just another small example is when outdoor dining was established, there were some areas we could help to make sure that was done safely as well.
Thank you. You and both of you chiefs have shared some pretty intense and some pretty stressful, situations. And, when we recognize throughout the year, you are dealing, with stressful situations every day. And it's important to note that that's also one reason why we as a city are looking to care for the mental health of our first responders so that they are at their best as they are engaging and serving and protecting our community. Thank you for that very, very much. And thanks to all of you. Thanks to each of you. I really feel like in this discussion is really with all of them that we've had, there's so much more that we could talk about and so much more that we can learn. But I do appreciate your time to share with us and really help us know the progress that's been made and also the work that's yet to be done in 2021 in this area. I want to say thank you to City Councilor Gina Roletto, to Nancy Lopez, our Latinx Business Outreach Director for the Hillsborough Chamber of Commerce, Hillsborough Police Chief Jim Coleman, our Chief of Hillsborough Fire and Rescue, David Downey, and also our Assistant City Manager, Rahim Harji. And also thanks to all of you who are watching, whether it be on your phone, your TV, on your computer. We're grateful that you also have taken the time to join us. And remember that there's a total of 6 of these community conversations all together. So make sure that you listen to all of them. And we appreciate your time. We appreciate your commitment to our city. And please know we are equally committed to serving you and being responsive to you as well. So thank you, take care, and take care of each other. Bye-bye.